Greetings, YouTube. I found a list of questions recently, and I thought I would answer them because I love these kind of things. So here we go. This is known as the talk about? Yeah, the talk about list. It's a little bit different than just asking specific questions. These are more general responses. So number one is talk about the first time you watched your favorite movie. My favorite movie is Blade Runner. I saw it when it was originally released. I was captivated by the trailers, by the soundtrack. When I went to see that, I fell in love, lock, stock, and barrel. That is simply one of the most wonderful films ever produced. I've once heard it described as the most perfect, imperfect film ever made, and I don't think I can disagree. 2, talk about your first kiss. My first kiss was with a pedophile. 3, talk about the person you've had the most intense romantic feelings for. That would be my wife, and she is the center of my world. So I'm not sure what else I can say about that. She is my heart. I think that kind of says it all. 4, talk about the thing you regret most so far. I would like to think that I don't regret anything, that I've kind of expunged myself of regrets. The past is a book. We can learn from it, but we can never change it, and trying to is just a waste of time. 5, talk about the best birthday you've had. That birthday, my wife asked me to marry her. She gave me a copy of the Oxford English Dictionary, which is on that shelf behind me. Talk about the worst birthday you've had. I had some guys that I invited over. We had a sleepover at my house outside in the backyard, and it was not a good dynamic mix of people. And I was still a child and living in an abusive household, and it was just not fun. 7, talk about your biggest insecurity. My biggest insecurity? Well, since I suffer from anxiety, maybe that's my biggest insecurity at this point. It's just the general dealing with anxiety itself. 8, talk about the thing you are most proud of. The fact that I am almost completely free of depression and have my anxiety under much better control now than I did when I was younger. 9, talk about the little things on your body that you like the most. Oddly, I like my age spots. I actually enjoy my age spots. I've never been able to figure that out, but I have. I like the way my hands have aged in general. The wrinkles and the lines on them. I kind of like the way they look. I've heard these described as German hands because that's a very kind of a square palm and the fingers kind of taper. Apparently it's a German thing. I kind of like my hands. I also kind of still like my nose. My nose is aging well. 10, talk about the biggest fight you've ever had. Well, there are verbal disagreements, and then there are physical disagreements. I've had to disarm someone that had a knife without harming the person that had the knife. That was zero fun. I've had to choke someone unconscious because they were in the midst of an absolute full-blown episode where they were trying to harm themselves and the people around them. I've punched people out of anger. So these are things I've done. I'm not saying I'm proud of them. Sometimes it's just what it is. 11, talk about the best dream you've ever had. The best dream I've ever had. I have really great dreams, as people who have seen my channel before will probably tell you. I talk about them frequently. The best dream I've ever had? I had a dream about 3 years ago, I guess. In the dream, I was running my toes through shag carpet. And I was squeezing it with my toes. And as I began to wake up, I realized it was a dream because I could feel the carpet with my toes. And I suffer from neuropathy. And I can't feel the carpet with my toes. And I didn't want to wake up, and it was too late. And the sensation was gone. And I don't remember consciously now what that sensation was like. Talk about the worst dream you've ever had. Oh, I've had dreams that were horrific, involving the undead, representing anxieties. Dreams where I was a killer, where I was a torturer. Dreams where I was a serial stalker. I've had really, really horrible dreams in my life. Let's move on. Talk about the first time you had sex and how you imagined your first time. First time I was sexually involved with someone, it was a pedophile. Not how I imagined it. I imagined it in a manner probably that most of us imagine it. Incredibly and utterly unrealistic. Talk about a vacation. Well, I just had 6 days off because I have a flu. At the time of this recording, I just went back to work. I had to use 2 vacation days to cover that. So that's my last vacation. Not very pleasant. Talk about by the time you were most content in life. That would be now. Talk about the best party you have ever been to. The best party I've ever been to. Well, I actually did party when I was younger. I actually drank at one time when I was under 22. I drank, and I was to quite a few parties that were pretty good. That got kind of wild. That were people there of sketchy and questionable character, and some of them were quite interesting. But you know, most of us have been to those. People got drunk or high and did things they shouldn't have done, and we live and learn. We move on. Talk about someone you want to be friends with. That's an interesting question. I suppose the person I have made contact with most recently, who I would like to be friends with, would be Jenny, the Rogue DM. Okay, 18. Talk about something that happened in elementary school. Elementary school. I can remember the swine flu vaccination. Because I can remember the person in front of me getting their vaccination and passing out. And they were like a 6th grader. And I was like a 4th grader. And I got the injection without even blinking an eye. Because I get received injections every month because of allergies. So I remember that. Thinking about, wow, you don't really have any fortitude now, do you? 20. Talk about something that happened in high school. I met the first woman I ever loved. She was not in high school. She was 20. But that's something that happened in high school. Talk about a time you had to turn someone down. I had to turn more than one person down of both genders over the years. And some of the times that was the end of our connection with each other, and sometimes it did not affect our friendship at all. Talk about your worst fear. Isolation, I guess. 23. Talk about a time someone turned you down. Oh, I can't remember how many times I got turned down. It never really bothered me. I would ask somebody if they were interested, and if they weren't, I said okay, and I moved on. I didn't take it personally, and I didn't beat myself over it. And I'm happy to say that didn't happen as many times as they said yes. Talk about talk about something someone told you that meant a lot. My wife was willing to accept me for who I was, and that act of kindness was the most painful experience I've ever had. Which says something right there, doesn't it? Talk about an ex-best friend. I had a friend who I loved deeply, and he decided not to vaccinate his child, and I severed my connection with him utterly. Like that. It took me 2 minutes, and I'm done. I deleted every contact number I had with him, and never contacted him again. How about things you do when you're sick? I have a crappy voice. I cough a lot. I often have aches and pains, and I sit and look at my computer like a drone poking around on websites. Talk about your favorite part of someone else's body. My wife has a little warm spot right here. I love it. Talk about your fetishes. My fetishes. Well, some of the things I don't want to talk about my fetishes, but I will say that at one time I was in a top-bottom relationship, and I was the top. So there you go. Talk about what turns you on. I am fond of women. I have been known to comment that I am an ass man, so I guess that's turned me on. Talk about what turns you off. Well, you just turn off, turn on. Smoking. Complete turn off. Now, you're talking about other things, for example, a wonderful imagination and a desire to seek for knowledge. Those turn me on, and willful ignorance turn me off. So those questions can be taken more than one way, but I took them as to be relationship related because it was right after the fetish bit. Talk about what you think death is like. If I may sound corny, I see death as a doorway into the next realm. So it doesn't scare me in the least. Talk about a place you remember from your childhood. Webster School in Manchester. I remember that fondly as a child. And I think if I were to walk back on that playground again, I would still have a fond memory of the place. Talk about what you do when you are sad. Isolate myself and be miserable. Talk about the worst physical pain you've endured. Laser surgery to correct my bleeding retinas. An argon laser was an excruciating, painful thing I've ever endured, and I don't recommend anyone have it done. Be careful. Take care of yourself. Don't become diabetic. Talk about things you wish you could stop doing. Right now, it's coughing. But I would like to reduce my ego as much as possible. So maybe being less egotistical. I wish I could be. I guess my ego would control less of my life. 36. Talk about your guilty pleasures. See, I'm not really guilty about my pleasures. You know? So I don't know if I have any guilty pleasures. I admit, I will own my pleasures, even if they are not common, even if they are pleasures that people may not necessarily attribute to me. 37. Talk about someone you thought you were in love with. Her name was Carrie. And she was a member of my gaming group. And she was lovely and quirky. And she was pretty much a manic pixie dream girl. And I projected things onto her that weren't reality. And I was an idiot. And if I see her again someday, I would apologize. 38. Talk about songs that remind you of certain people. Tupelo Honey, that makes me think of my wife. Joe Cocker's You Are So Beautiful makes me think of my ex-wife. Talk about things you wish you'd known earlier. Oh, so many things would have made my life easier if I'd known them earlier. But as I said at the beginning of this list, life is a book. You can learn from it, but never change it, and don't bother wasting your time speculating. 40. Talk about the end of something in your life. Ends of friendships, ends of relationships, ends of books, ends of games, ends of campaigns, ends of depression. Ends of anxiety, ends of illnesses, ends of videos.